Hi, I'm Viviane. I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to speak this evening about the history of vice, particularly in relation to women, sex, and prostitution. And I'd like to begin with some local Calgary history, the case of Lizzie Sear. Lizzie Sear was a Métis woman arrested for vagrancy in 1917. Convicted, she was sentenced to 6 months hard labor. The vagrancy laws were often used against women in particular working as prostitutes. They said, quite simply, that a woman who was out in public and unable to provide an adequate justification of her employment income could be considered a vagrant and sent to jail. Vice then was yielded in particular against women who dared to occupy public space. Or put another way, the notion of vice was used to justify laws which ultimately believed that a woman's place is in the home. The case of Lizzie Sear is interesting for more than just local Calgary history, however. In fact, it's at the heart of the 1929 Persons case, the legal case that recognized women as persons in the Dominion of Canada. I don't have time to go into the details of the case in their entirety, but basically when Sear was convicted, her lawyer tried to argue that the female magistrate, Alice Jameson, that's her in the center, wasn't legally a person, and therefore her ruling could not stand. Canada's Supreme Court agreed, and feminists such as Jameson, Emily Murphy, and Nellie McClung took the case to the British Privy Council. That body overturned the Supreme Court ruling, declaring women as persons and upholding the conviction. And so the recognition of women's rights in Canada depends and turns on the very notion of vice. And a Métis woman did 6 months hard labor. Let me provide another example from the work I do from the history of Montreal, from the cabarets of Montreal in the 1960s. So Montreal was Canada's metropolis at the time, and the clubs were jam-packed every night. And they developed a practice known as the sale of phonies. So basically these were drinks that were really, really diluted and really, really expensive. And the cabarets of the city made a fortune. They would hire hostesses to get these drinks sold, and they would pay them on a commission basis, 25 cents a drink. And a stir stick would serve as proof of purchase. So these charming, beautiful women would get clients to buy them drinks all night long, collect their stir sticks, and cash out at the end of the night. Rumor has it that some of these women also use the opportunity to negotiate some side business with clients. Now, the city of Montreal in 1967 thought that this combination of beautiful women and drunken men was a dangerous one indeed. And so it adopted a specific bylaw, 3416. And basically what 3416 did was it prevented any communication between artists, club employees, and members of the general public in the clubs. So in order to eradicate vice, Montreal tried to ban communication entirely. The effects of this bylaw were dramatic. Whereas previously, sex workers stayed inside clubs and got clients to buy them drinks all night long, with the passage of this bylaw, they flooded the streets. My point is simply this. Changes in the regulation of vice don't eradicate it, but they certainly impact the conditions in which women work. The third case I want to bring to help us understand vice is from a research project I was doing on the history of HIV. And I asked a woman to talk to me about her experience with death. And she recounted this story to me, a story of the death of her friend who was a sex worker and who was murdered on the job. And here's what she said. It was really quite violent. I lost my best friend. She was murdered on the job. And we had this mutual friend. He went to the police station to find out what happened. And he told me they received him politely at the station, and they told him, "Sir, the person about whom you are speaking is a prostitute. And you need to understand, for us, someone who's a prostitute, we consider that death a suicide. And that was the most violent thing I could hear after her death. It was a slap in the face. It was a second assassination. The words of this woman help us understand how to make sense of vice. Vice isn't just that some women go to jail because they're bad girls or out in public. Understanding vice requires more than simply understanding that changes in its regulation in turn impact the working conditions of women in the sex trade. Vice is so forceful, so powerful, that in the face of murder, the police do nothing. In the face of murder, the police do nothing. As we continue the conversation this evening, I would encourage us to reflect on just how powerful vice can be, as well as the function that it serves. Thank you.